everyone, and thank you for attending this session. My name is Adriano Di Toppa, and today I'll walk you through our data strategy at Kemin Industries. But before we start, I want to say thank you to the Hyperight team for their dedication and exceptional support to make this event possible. Now let's move on. I'll start giving you some brief introduction about Kemin to provide you a little bit of context and the complexity of the organization. I'll start giving you an idea about our vision. At Kemin, our vision statement matters. In fact, we believe that by serving our customers, we can make a difference in billions of people's life every day around the globe. When Kemin was founded in 1961, the world population was about half of what it is today. And by 2042, the world's population will reach about 9 billion people. We are striving to transform the quality of life every day for 80% of the population with our product and services. Kemin has about more than 15 facilities, more than 15 manufacturing facilities around the globe. You see here in the blue dots in the United States, 3 here in Italy, where I'm located. Then we have Belgium, Brazil, South Africa, China, India, Singapore. So we have manufacturing locations all around the globe. And we have here on the red dots, you see our sales offices. And on the green dots, you see the facilities that Kemin has to grow and harvest our specialty crops. The reason I'm giving you this overview is that to describe a little bit about the complexity of the organization and in which we operate, and we'll describe also some peculiar aspect of this diverse organization. When we started our journey into the data science, we immediately realized that data science is not only about technology, but is more about culture and business processes. I will put a lot of emphasis on the business processes and on importance of having well-structured and well-documented business processes. Those are critical elements to build a proper data and data science strategy. I wanted to also use this sentence from Satya Nadella to introduce you my presentation. And the reason is simple. This sentence, it contains several elements which are critical to our data strategy at Kemin. In fact, it talks about data availability, talks about trust in data, trust in people who use the data. So it is really something which contains many of the aspects which are critical to our strategy. It talks about data-driven culture. Some companies define themselves as data-driven just because they have a bunch of reports or dashboards. This does not mean being data-driven. Being data-driven means having a data-driven culture, which is well described in this sentence. Our data adoption roadmap includes 6 different stages. And today I will walk you through those stages, trying to provide details about our experience with practical examples about our journey. The roadmap itself, I think, is pretty standard, I would say, so you can find it very similar in many books. I've adapted it to make it compatible with our scenarios, I would say, with our peculiarity and with our context. So the roadmap includes 6 stages. We move from ideation to data collection and curation. And since I'm a data engineer, and I'm assuming I'm talking to a lot of other data engineers, to me, the second stage, the data collection curation, is one of the most important at all. Then we move through the descriptive analytics, where you build your basic analytics, basic reporting, basic dashboards. Then we move to what we call learning phase, where you start creating initial machine learning models, and then you move to a more advanced where you have deep learning, where your machine learning models are available to be consumed by other applications, and then you go to the maintenance mode. But we will go through each of these stage one by one. So the first part of this stage is the ideation. Ideation is where you identify your motivation. You need to answer questions like, what problem we try to solve? How does our organization operate today? Or how do we believe that our organization can benefit by the adoption of AI technologies? To implement the ideation phase properly, you should focus on becoming an innovation-focused organization. To achieve this, you need to properly support and establish and support a culture of innovation. For instance, you should even introduce policies to encourage innovation. For instance, I'm sure many of you know that Google has a 20% rule, which allows employees to work on personal projects that are aligned with the business, with company strategy. And I think you know that, many of you know that products which are market leaders now, like Gmail or Google Maps, came out of those 20% projects, which were created by a policy, essentially by a process which was supported by a policy which was built to encourage innovation. One of the tools you want to use to support your innovation is what we call the idea bank. So the idea bank is a method, is a process, I would say, to store all ideas that have been received but not yet implemented. Usually allows submissions from all levels of the organization, and it is supervision by an innovation-focused group. Of course, it is subject to periodical review. Here I mentioned a few examples of how idea bank could look like. So usually you have an idea, you have a brief description of idea, you have an estimated impact, you have let's say an idea of the value which will bring to the business. Then you have an idea about the estimated investment which is needed to realize, to put in place that idea. And then you have generically you have a submitter, so a person or an organization, a team who has submitted the idea. At Kemin, we used a slightly different approach. We introduced surveys. So we decided to send out surveys, so direct questions about data availability, trust, and desired data integrations to all employees. So essentially, we ask questions like, what data are you currently missing to get your job done? Are you asking other departments' data to complete your job? Or how would you rate your trust level in the data you consume every day? So we ask open questions to our colleagues, to the business. And we have a focus innovation group which handles all the ideas which are collected through those surveys. We use also those surveys to receive feedback and comments about the ongoing initiatives. So it is really a very valid tool. So one of the other tools which we care the most is the business process mapping. So the strategy is critical to create a clear definition of the business processes. This is not usually done via SOPs, so standard operating procedures, which are great to trace the flow of information and the data throughout the organization. You can also use information flows, which tells you what data is passed across various departments, and then also how this data is getting processed. For instance, even though we use a global ERP at Kemin, local processes might be executed in a slightly different way. Think about, for instance, a logistics process or account receivable, account payable, customer service processes, even though they are executed using the same ERP software. And this is obviously a great advantage. On a local basis, regionally, they might be executed in slightly different way. Obviously, this is there's a large impact on the data and has a large impact on the process. Think about trying to create a process or a model to evaluate the efficiency of the supply chain. If the logistics process in some regions is executed in a slightly different manner than is done in other regions, then you realize that the data you are collecting are not equal, are not the same, are not homogeneous. So you need to spend time to change, to prep your data, to clean your data. So it's really essential that your processes are well mapped out. One of my colleagues, which I hope is attending also this session today, refers to this business process mapping as creation of the Bible. So meaning that we have a documents which clearly define the processes. Those documents are handled by business process managers, business process owners. So people who have a lot of experience with the business, and they act as a trade union between IT and the business, and they help to keep the consistency of those documents. And most important, they keep those processes up to date. Obviously, business process mapping is also very important, very supportive of the data lineage initiative, which we will introduce in a bit. So we say that we spend a lot of time cleaning up our data. Again, I think I'm talking to a lot of people who are very well versed in data management. So I think you all know that we spend a lot of time collecting, cleaning, and preparing the data, while we unfortunately have a limited amount of time to analyze the data and getting insights out of the data. This happens why? Because our data very often are not as we expect they are to. They should be. In fact, we want data to be up to date. We want them to be accurate, clean, unbiased, and trustworthy. If you recall the initial sentence from Satya Nadella, you will notice that the sentence talks about data trust. So people are eager to use data, are eager to manipulate data, to see the data, to use the data to draw their conclusions. But very essential, they need to trust the data, and the data needs to be up to date. These are two of the elements which personally I think have a lot of influence on the level of trust that business has on the data. In our case, cleanness of the data, trust on the data, and real-time data are three of the major factors which influence the trust data of our business. And in fact, to make sure you can enhance the trust in your data by the business, you should implement a robust data governance initiative. The purpose of data governance initiative is all about enhance the trust in data. And the data governance initiative usually sits on three main pillars. Data discoverability. Data must be discoverable, must be queryable. For this, you should put in place a data catalog. You should also put in place a data lineage initiative, as we just said. Data lineage is essential. It is like a recording of the path that the data takes as it travels to our ETL pipelines. In fact, as the data travels through the ETL processes, information gets mixed up with other information, gets transformed. So we need to make sure that the information about the data sources is preserved. Obviously, also one of the other important element of the data discoverability is data quality, of course, and also master data management. At Kemin, we are now working on introducing a master data management initiative. We truly believe that this can bring a lot of value to our overall data strategy. So we will be putting a lot of efforts in this initiative very, very soon. The second pillar on which data governance is built on top of is security, of course. So you need to make sure data is not only available, but is secured. And you need also to ensure regulatory compliance. Remember, with a company which is global, as operations everywhere in the world, you need to make sure that you are the way you maintain, you extract, you transform your data, you need to make sure you are in compliance with the regulatory worldwide. And of course, you need to make sure you have an appropriate management of the data, sensitivity of the data. At some point, you also realize that data are not only a byproduct of your processes, but they are a product itself. That is important because you need to make sure that you have accountability for this. I mean, you have people like, in our case, business process managers who understand the data, who understand the process, and then you can refer to when building your data governance. So the next step, the next stage in our journey, in our roadmap, is the descriptive analytics. This is the phase where you create interest and appetite for the data by delivering analytical layer, offering analytical layer to the business, building your dashboards, and also starting your storytelling. Storytelling initiatives are very important to, let's say, create interest and appetite for data in the business. So now at this point, we will have the data have been extracted, have been cleaned up. We have put in place our data quality, data governance initiative. We start discovering the data with descriptive analytics, building, for instance, our data cubes, and using our BI systems to pull data out of the data cubes, building our storytelling strategies. Now is the moment where you start, we start learning. Learning means to us start building up, scaling up our infrastructure for data collection and building up predictive models. Typically, you will build models on forecasting, on customer retention or customer churn, on fraud detection. For instance, Kemin is a manufacturing company, so very important for us is to prevent any disruption in a supply chain, especially in this period where supply chains around the globe are under strong pressure. So one of the predictive models could be model on the preventing or type to predict the next failure in our supply chain, or the next, for instance, batch rejections from one of our suppliers. Those are models which can bring a lot of value to the business because they can prevent, for instance, like in the case I just mentioned, disruption in the supply chain. Of course, business should be also always involved. You should also always create a pilot project with a project before delivering and extending those models. Then finally, you can, once you went through all the steps, you can finally get your AI and deep learning stage. This is where your models can be consumed by business processes and other applications, for instance, via APIs. Obviously, you always need to review those models with the business. And very important, you also always need to review your idea bank. we are almost up to time. Time is also almost up. Let me just give you now a brief recap of our roadmap. We start with the ideation, where you identify your motivation, you create your idea bank, you maintain your idea bank. Then you move to the next stage, when you do data collection creation, you implement your data governance, you start building your trust in the data for your business, you make data discoverable, available for the business, you implement your data catalog, for instance, you implement your data lineage initiative. Then you start building your descriptive analytics initiative. So you start building your analytical layer, your data cubes, you start to deliver initial descriptive analytics to the business. The next step is building your basic machine learning models, examples, how to prevent, how to predict failure in one of your machines if you are a manufacturing company, or how to predict customer churn if you are a selling company. The next stage would be the real adoption of AI, deep learning, where your data models, your machine learning models are available for consumption to other applications through APIs, and then you enter the maintenance mode. Maintenance mode means scaling up your infrastructure, means adopt, open to new technologies, and review the idea bank. Okay, I think time is up. I'll be around if you have questions, comments, or feedback. And thank you very much for attending this session.